Star Trek Academy, Collision Course, Chapter 5. Spock had seen the men in gray as soon as they entered the Garden of Venus and immediately sunk back on the banquet beside Dala. "Well, that's more like it," she said, and reached out to grab his ears. Spock felt his heart race and hated the sensation and what it signified to him. An acknowledgement of the danger the men in gray represented. "Those two," Spock said, indicating the new arrivals. "Consular agents." Dala removed her hand from his ear. Spock's relief was immediate. "They followed you?" "Unlikely, but I should not be found here." "If this was a setup..." Spock recognized the mixture of human emotions in Dala's expression, anger tinged by apprehension. But he was ready, having rehearsed his part. "I assure you, I am in even more danger than you." He rose to his feet to bring this disquieting meeting to an end. "I will go. They have no reason to suspect you. And the next time we meet, I will choose the venue." Dala's expression shifted disagreeably from one of apprehension to sly knowing. "A more private one. I'd like that." Spock pulled his cloak shut, as if sealing himself in an environmental suit. "Madam, good evening." Dala's dark eyes sparked with amusement. "My pleasure, and maybe next time yours too." She blew him a kiss. Spock could not suppress his shudder, and as he walked away, his sensitive hearing caught her throaty laugh. He shook off his discomfiture and quickly pinpointed the two agents, separated now, each patrolling the outside edges of the club's huge room. The solution to avoiding their detection was obvious. He would cross through the middle of the room between them. Gratified by the logic of the situation, Spock went down the few steps to the main floor and began walking purposefully toward the doors he had entered through. With each step, he also berated himself for feeling gratified. His human side had been vulnerable to the human female and her pheromonic perfume. More unwelcome evidence of his particular genetic weakness: humanity. He was also at the entrance, close to freedom, his work here at an end, his plan, as he had predicted, now perfectly in play. Even as Kirk automatically flirted with the attractive server who had brought him a glassless column of distilled lunar water, he kept his attention on Alyssa. She was walking toward the back too quickly, head down, the picture of someone who didn't want to be noticed, which of course made everyone notice her, including one of the men in gray. Kirk thanked the server, waved a credit wafer over the payment sensor on her tray, and tapped it twice to add a generous tip. "Nice," the server said, and meant it, hovering to see if Kirk was open to other things. But Kirk had already dropped her from his mind, and the server moved on. He was busy visualizing the layout of the club like a chessboard whose primary pieces were Alyssa, the security agents, and himself. Somehow, he had to set up an immediate diversionary tactic to upset his opponent's attack on his queen. It was time to sacrifice a pawn. Fortunately, there was one headed his way. Kirk held his column of water without conscious awareness of the spongy sensation of the low-powered force field that kept it in place, and silently counted out the timing of his target's footsteps. Then, at just the right moment, he commenced Plan A. He extended his foot, and the sullen youth with long black hair awkwardly sprawled onto Kirk's table before righting himself. Kirk instantly leapt to his feet. "Hey, watch where you're going!" For the briefest of moments, Kirk's pawn looked flustered, but his response was brittle and, unfortunately, under control. "You deliberately attempted to trip me." Kirk commenced Plan B. He threw the column of water at the teenager's long, narrow face, and the force field sparkled off, drenching his dark hair and clothing. The youth stared down at his sodden cloak, up at Kirk, down his cloak again, but did nothing else, as if he were in shock. The nearby patrons, who'd paused for an expectant instant, returned, disappointed to their other pursuits. Now Kirk noticed that one of the security agents had obviously signaled the other because both were converging on Alyssa. Kirk couldn't believe his bad luck. A few hundred people in this club, and he'd picked the only one who was unused to bar fights. Kirk commenced Plan C. He swung his fist at the teenager's jaw. Then it was Kirk's turn for shock because in a move too fast to see, the youth caught his fist mid-swing. Kirk put his full weight into pushing his fist forward, but without seeming to expend the slightest effort, the skinny teenager slowly forced it down and to the side. "You're behaving in a most illogical manner." Amazingly, the kid wasn't even breathing hard, yet. "You're right. My mistake." Kirk let his arm go limp, and as soon as he felt the grip on him loosen, Kirk charged forward, punching the teenager in the stomach at the same time as he delivered an upward headbutt. Kirk's stomach punch was deflected, and his headbutt only struck a shoulder, but as he and his pawn flew backward into another table, he finally heard the sounds of chaos. Some of the more boisterous patrons were flinging themselves enthusiastically into fights of their own. Others were scattering, heading for the exit. Someone even yelled, "Chicken jockey!" For the moment, though, Kirk was on his back, his reluctant accomplice pinning him with one hand to the floor. "What are you trying to accomplish?" The teenager asked calmly over the din. He flipped his soaked hair out of his eyes. Kirk had run out of plans, so he resorted to the truth. "Those two guys in gray are after my girlfriend. They're security agents. I needed a distraction." Kirk's erstwhile prey gave him a withering look. "The agents are from the Vulcan embassy. They are after me." Sure enough, Kirk saw pointed ears through the youth's flattened hair. 500 people in this joint, and I picked the one Vulcanian? Vulcan, the Vulcan said. Kirk realized the crowd had stopped yelling and the music had stopped. Instead, he and the Vulcan were surrounded by an unmoving wall of official-looking legs. Kirk looked up to see the two men in gray, their cloth caps covering their ears. With them was the club greeter in the black tuxedo and 4 protectors, blue-clad officers of San Francisco Protective Services. "You done now?" the heavy-set greeter asked him. "Looks that way," Kirk said with a smile. If all these officers of the law were gathered here, the odds are better than good that his diversion had worked and that Alyssa was already halfway back to the academy. A protector motioned for the Vulcan to release him. Kirk swiftly calculated the odds of getting out of this particular entanglement, developed his strategy on the fly. He sat up from the floor, held up his hand to the Vulcan. "Hey, buddy, no hard feelings?" Reflexively, as Kirk had anticipated, the young Vulcan helped pull him to his feet. Kirk stumbled against him. "Whoa, sorry. You're a lot stronger than you look." "Vulcan is a high-gravity world, and my species has evolved myostatin inhibitors to enhance..." Kirk interrupted what threatened to be a biology lecture. "Okay, that's great." He turned to the club greeter, held up his credit wafer. "For the mix-up, I'll pay for the damage." As the greeter sneered at Kirk unpleasantly, a protector took the wafer. "Yes, you will," the officer said, "but not the way you think." Kirk felt powerful hands grab his upper arms. As 2 protectors frog-marched him toward the main doors. "Let's take this outside," one said. The 2 Vulcans from the embassy took up position on either side of the young Vulcan and encouraged him to go in the same direction. The Vulcan appeared unperturbed by his capture, and for himself, Kirk didn't care what happened next. Whatever it was couldn't be worse than seeing a cloud of vaporized blood puff from the back of Edith Zaglada as the 8-year-old girl ran for... Kirk shook his head, forcing the familiar blur of horror from his mind. All that mattered here and now was Alyssa. One way or another, she could use what he'd done tonight to prove her innocence. He'd outsmarted Starfleet. He just didn't care about anything else. Chapter 6. Almost a century earlier, when the first dish-shaped component had been assembled 35,900 kilometers above the Pacific within perpetual line of sight to San Francisco and Starfleet headquarters, the facility had been named for a heroic admiral who had successfully held back overwhelming Romulan forces at a beleaguered colony world. But just as nation-based armed conflict had long been relegated to Earth's distant history, the success of the United Federation of Planets promised to bring the same fate to interstellar wars. So the orbiting structure had grown, with segment after segment added over the years until it had become an immense white blossom of duranium plating and sublime technology, unarmed, a major hub of Starfleet's vast network of logistical supply. The Admiral's statue remained in an alcove near the main transporter complex to greet each arrival, if they cared to look. But with the drumbeats of war so faded and the primary mission of Starfleet now more than ever one of exploration, the facility's once heroic name had been simplified, so that now throughout the fleet it was simply called Space Dock. Its main purpose was to offer protected berths for starships in port for replenishment, and a warren of corridors and cramped little offices to serve the intricate bureaucracy that enabled an interstellar fleet to function. One of those collections of small offices, on a seldom visited level, in the first and largest level of the facility, bore a simple sign, a few of the letters scratched. It was called the Department of General Services, a footnote to a footnote in Starfleet's organizational charts of no particular importance. In terms of spycraft, the DGS, perhaps one of the most important units of Starfleet, was hiding in plain sight. Eugene Mallory was 50 standard years old, but looked older. Even in his enlightened age, stress took its toll. While the Federation and Starfleet ably maintained the peace and well-being of hundreds of worlds united in common cause, there were those individuals whose task it was to look beyond the safe borders to the frontier and into the unknown. And if there was one thing all explorers knew, the unknown was often dangerous, sometimes deadly. It was the job of Mallory and the DGS to see that the unknown dangers of the frontier never took the Federation by surprise. 10 years in the job and his once dark hair was white, but even he had never seen images like those on his subspace communication screen right now. In the foreground was a Starfleet security captain, still in adaptive armor scorched by weapons fire. His grime-streaked face was distraught and deeply troubled, and not just for the 12 comrades in arms he'd lost in a firefight 3 relative hours ago. That battle had taken place on Hellstrom 3. It was a frontier colony planet where 1,000 humans had banded together to create a peaceful new world, and then were taken captive, held hostage by a savage, hostile force. The captain was just finishing his report with words hard to come by. From time to time, the image and sound shimmered with subspace interference. We couldn't determine the enemy's communication protocols, couldn't tell how they were getting their orders. Mallory asked the obvious question. Are you certain the attackers were receiving orders? The captain thought that over, wiped his face. You mean they were just left here to commit suicide like this? Mallory sighed. No. They likely thought reinforcements were on their way. They didn't know it was a last stand. The The captain's eyes flickered, and Mallory felt sure the battle he had just fought was replaying itself in his mind. They wouldn't surrender. Mallory understood what was left unsaid, but what the Federation faced was greater than this one small skirmish. You and your team saved the hostages, Captain. You saved the colony. This isn't why we're out here, Mallory. This isn't who we are. The captain moved back and away from the imager to reveal the bodies of the enemy, laid out respectfully by the captain's medical corpsman. The youngest of the dead was 8. The eldest, no more than 12. Each enemy soldier, each corpse, a human child. You saved the hostages, Mallory repeated firmly, though he knew it was little comfort. But anguish and remorse were the traits of Starfleet and the Federation, not those of this new enemy attacking the frontier. More than twice, 100 light-years away, the captain nodded his agreement, a gesture contradicted by his grim expression. Alpha team out. The screen went blank. Mallory rocked back in his chair and thought of demons, humans who would send their young to commit such atrocities. The captain's words seemed to echo in his office. This isn't who we are. His desk screen beeped. Thankful for the distraction, he tapped the accept button. Mallory. His aide replied from the outer office. Sir, a Starfleet staff car was stolen in San Francisco, and the protectors have the thieves in custody. Mallory considered the surreal statement with a sigh. Sally, you're telling me this why? According to SCIS, the thieves stole the car with the same security override technique that was used to steal that dilithium from the Academy 2 weeks ago. The investigators think there's a chance the ones who stole the car and the ones who stole the dilithium are the same, and they said you'd want to know. Mallory had read the analysis of how the dilithium had been stolen. Whoever hit the Academy isn't stupid enough to get picked up stealing a car. Still, he found a stylus and turned on his pad. Like, give me the details. He began to jot down Sally's notes. In his experience, details could lead anywhere. Chapter 7. Sam Kirk welcomed the fog in the night. The soft, dark blanket kept the world away, kept everything else beyond the immediate moment indistinct and unthreatening. At some level, not that he'd ever admit it to anyone, that's what he needed most. Protection from a world he didn't understand and didn't want to. Unfortunately, the price of such security meant lying to the person who'd always protected him best, his brother. So he maneuvered the stolen car, not his first by any means, through the older sections of the city where he and others like him knew that the old power grids and cables interfered with the sensors of the all-seeing protective satellites whirling past overhead. The electronic shadows he navigated were almost as good as a sheltering cloak of fog and night, because he could pass through undetected and unnoticed the way he passed through life. At the main dock, he carefully parked the car between 2 warehouses, well away from the blue-white spotlights that marked the pathway for the automated cargo handlers that rolled back and forth along the pier. Even in the 23rd century, it was more energy efficient to ship bulk, raw materials, and large industrial components by sea. The squat machines loading and unloading the automated ocean freighters didn't require the pier lights, but they helped keep the handful of human stevedores out of danger as they worked. And where there were lights, there were shadows, and those had become Sam's home. He stayed in the car for a few minutes, watching, checking, looking for any minute change in the pattern of the robotic handler's actions. Then he opened the window, drew in the rich scent of the sea, listened for human footsteps. Nothing. The moment he judged it was safe, he snapped open his communicator. "Call the office," he said quietly. Almost at once, an artificial voice answered. Our offices are closed. Please call again. I've got a fast delivery to make, Sam said. The code word delivery could stand for almost anything, but the code word fast had only one meaning. Whatever was being delivered, it was Starfleet issue. We'll be able to accept deliveries on the 16th. The artificial voice clicked off, and the call ended. Keeping its running lights off, Sam started... Sorry. Sam started the car again and eased out into the cargo path, putting himself directly between two massive handlers on the search for new containers. At Dock 16, a security light shone over a towering section of seamless gray hull. Sam turned off the cargo path and drove steadily forward into the Pacific Rome, not bothering to slow when the car's proximity alarm chimed. A moment later, the car's windshield rippled with multiplied light, and he was through the holographic projection and inside the freighter's cavernous cargo hold. The welcoming committee was waiting, 7 of them, each with a laser rifle almost as big as the small figure who held it, each aiming at Sam. Sam pressed the door control, and when the door had fully opened, only then did he slowly step out of the vehicle, hands held in the clear. An amplified voice echoed over the buzzing and grinding noises of power tools working on other deliveries that had preceded Sam's. He's okay. Get started on the car. Sam hurriedly stepped back as the children, most around 10 or so, swarmed into the stolen Starfleet staff car. He watched it lurch across the metal deck plating toward a mechanics bay where 2 teenagers with industrial blazers stood ready to begin disassembling the prize. Then Sam's heart jumped a beat as a soft voice spoke behind him. That's a pretty little thing. Sam fought down his nervousness. He hadn't heard a single footfall. Hey, Griff. Griffin was Sam's age, just out of his teen years, but that was all he and Sam had in common. Griffin was tall and lean and wore drab utilitarian clothes, more suited to deep space freighters than Earth, with pockets everywhere and a hand laser on his belt. He told Sam he was running this operation for other interests, and who those interests were Sam didn't know or care to know. He didn't like coming here. Even more, he detested himself for needing to come here. But Earth had long ago eradicated the conditions that fueled easy crime. The only large-scale organizations that remained were invariably from off-world, and most often from outside the Federation. Sam didn't require any more detail than that. Griffin now ignored him as he usually did, his attention focused instead on the newly arrived car. One body panel was already off it, clattering on the deck. How the hell did you manage to steal a fleet car? Security override, Sam bluffed. Non-essential vehicles have a reduced encryption set. 10 million possible keys tops. Griffin hooked his thumbs in his gun belt and turned to study Sam. He nodded toward the car. How many emitters? 4. Let's hope they're working. Looks banged up. Griffin smiled at Sam as if daring him to continue lying. Sam capitulated quickly. Any conversation with Griffin was a minefield. He'd never been able to find a pattern to what set the guy off. Probably no one could. Jamie was driving, did a fancy dive and hard landing. Now Griffin looked at him with eyes that were ice blue and unreadable. Your little brother. He figured out the override. Yeah, he's good at stuff like that. Always building things. So you used some kind of override that got you into the car, let you drive it, but you still ended up being chased. Sam looked down at the deck, couldn't hold Griffin's gaze. When Jimmy was driving, yeah, but you should have seen him. He got away from the protectors, then the satellites. Sam chanced looking up to judge Griffin's actual mood and failed. All I had to do was drive here through the sensor shadows. So, not a lot of risk for you. Easy job. Sam felt sick, knew what Griffin was going to do, but it was too late. Nah, not really, I guess. Griffin scratched his cheek, then reached into his leather jacket, pulled out a credit wafer. So this should cover it. Sam took the wafer, squeezed it to read the balance. It was worse than he thought. 200? Problem. Sam was desperate enough to plead. Griff, it's worth at least 1,000. It's Starfleet. But Griffin didn't even acknowledge Sam's foolhardy attempt at argument. He turned his attention back to the staff car, by now a picked-over carcass with only one seat remaining bolted in place, all mechanisms exposed and disassembled. It's worth 10,000 to me, he said offhandedly. Sam's mind reeled at the thought of what 10,000 credits could buy him out of. Griffin laughed as two of his followers swore at each other when a crackling gout of sparks sprayed up from one of the emitter conduits. He cupped his hands to his mouth to shout over the noise, "Hey, idiots, cut the current before you blaze it!" Young teenager in charge of the disassembly crew waved back in acknowledgement, then cuffed the boy who'd done the damage. The child took the blow like a beaten dog without fighting back. Sam understood. There's no way to win with Griffin in charge, but still, 200 credits for something worth 10,000? So what do you say, Griff? I really need the credits. As soon as he'd spoken, Sam knew he'd messed up again. Never reveal a weakness. That's what his brother was always telling him. And in a negotiation, never let the other side know what you really want. Jimmy was always reading books about strategy and tactics and famous battles, but Sam had never been able to remember and act upon his brother's lessons, no matter how many times he heard them. Griffin's pale eyes were cold. I pay for labor, I get paid for parts. You don't know who to sell the parts to, and you sure as hell didn't invest a lot of labor to get me the car. I figure what you did is worth, let's say, a sea wafer. So the way I see it, giving you 2 C's, I'm being generous. How would you look at it, Georgie? Griffin had deliberately and tauntingly used the name that Sam had left behind when he fled the family farm and the unwanted life that George Joseph Kirk had mapped out for his older son. Sam's brother and his new friends called him by his middle name, the one that was his alone. Sam grasped at the last straw left to him. How about maybe something for Jimmy, for what he did? You're still negotiating with me? Sam's pulse fluttered. Would Griffin take back the credit wafer? Griffin stuck his lower lip out, thoughtful. Tell you what, you bring Jimmy by and I will take care of him. He's a talented kid. Made an override to boost fleet goods. I could use him. Sam took in the scene in the cargo hold, the huge chamber stacked with disassembled vehicles and stolen freight and armed children willing to do anything for their leader. For all that, he despised himself for his weakness and his fear. Sam had his limits. He would never, ever do anything to bring Jimmy into this life. He shook his head. This isn't for him. Griffin looked into Sam's soul, testing him, pulled out another credit wafer. Are you sure? From what you've told me, I don't think your brother's found his calling, so maybe I can help. Sam shook his head again. Griffin's only reply was to squeeze the credit wafer he held out so Sam could read the balance. Then he placed it in Sam's hand. 1,000 credits. It's not for the car, Griffin said. It's an advance for arranging an introduction. Sam stared at him, frozen. The 1,000 credit wafer burned into his flesh. Grin leaned forward, made it clear. Either give me all my credits back or bring your little brother to me. Your call. What's it going to be, Georgie? Sam already knew his answer. Chapter 8. On the far side of the Garden of Venus, there was a parking lot, and it was there that the official vehicles had gathered. 3 from the San Francisco Protective Services and 1 unmarked car with diplomatic codes on its ID plates. Kirk and the Vulcan, joined at the wrist by a pair of inductance cuffs, stood by one of the SFPS cars. No one was paying attention to them, but both were aware that alarms would shriek if either of them moved more than 2 meters from the car. Kirk raised his left hand, forcing the Vulcan's right hand up as well. He eyed the glowing blue stripes that pulsed around the metal bands encircling each of their wrists. "Don't suppose you know any good Vulcanian tricks for getting out of these?" "Vulcan," his companion said, "and an escape attempt would be illogical." "But it might be fun." The Vulcan stared at Kirk. Kirk finally had to grin at the young alien's expression of total incomprehension. "Kidding," Kirk said. "But really, do you want to go to prison?" The Vulcan blinked. "Earth has no prisons. You really aren't from around here, are you?" "Do I look like I am from around here?" Kirk gave him the once-over. "That rap of yours hasn't been in style for a couple of centuries, but with all that hair covering your ears, yeah, you could be one of us." Kirk watched as the Vulcan seemed to shudder at his assessment. But then again, who really knew how alien minds saw things? "Anyway," Kirk continued, "Central Bureau of Penology, Stockholm. You've heard of Stockholm. Founded in the 13th century of Earth's Common Era, population of 3,487,612 as of the census of 2348. Home of the Karolinska Institute, which decides the winners of your Nobel and Z. Magnus Prize. That should be 2248. Wow, I can't believe you know all that." "You mentioned a Central Bureau of Penology?" "Right." Kirk studied him a moment longer, wondering if there was some attempt at alien humor here. "Mostly, it runs all the off-world prisons. You get it? They ship prisoners off-world so they can say, 'No prisons here on Earth,' but they do have this big detention facility there for retraining, rehabilitation." "Logical. That's a big thing for you, huh?" "Rehabilitation?" Kirk rolled his eyes. "Logic. Logic is the basis of modern Vulcan society." Kirk waited expectantly. The Vulcan gave him a questioning look. "You disagree?" "No, I just wasn't sure you could give an answer that short." "I could expand upon it. I have no doubt." The alien's shoulders moved in what looked like a shrug, but he didn't say anything else. Not wishing to encourage his fellow detainee to change his mind, Kirk shifted his attention to the 4 SFPS officers who appeared to be in heated discussion with the 2 Vulcan consular agents by the next car, about 10 meters away and out of earshot. The way they kept gesturing at the 2 apprehended youths, it didn't look good. "You ever been in trouble like this before?" Kirk asked. He kept his gaze on the adults, trying to read their intentions. "I am not in trouble now." Kirk laughed. "Really? How do you define trouble on your planet?" "They are interested only in the person or persons who apparently stole a Starfleet staff car. Since I did not steal a Starfleet staff car, I am not a person of interest." Kirk gave the Vulcan a sideways glance. "How do you know about the staff car?" "That is what they are discussing." "You can hear what they're saying?" His companion regarded the group of officers, human and Vulcan. "The ranking SFPS officer claims that at least 2 and possibly 3 young people are responsible for the staff car theft." "Well, those ears are definitely good for something." "Furthermore," the Vulcan said, as if Kirk hadn't spoken, "Agent Kest, the senior of the 2 consular agents, makes the point that there is no logical motive for me to steal a staff car. He also states that I have diplomatic immunity, so any attempt to charge me with any crime is moot." "Moot," Kirk said. "So, if that's such a logical argument, why haven't the SFPS let you go?" "I have found humans to be argumentative," Kirk couldn't resist. No, we're not. Yes, the Vulcan hesitated, raising an eyebrow. Kidding? You catch on fast. Kirk smiled approvingly. From the dense fog above, a landing searchlight produced a glowing cone that played over the parking lot until it locked onto an empty patch of pavement. Slowly, another Starfleet car descended into view. It was different from the one Kirk had used for his demonstration. The new vehicle was dark blue with a red pinstripe and arrow running its length, as if someone thought it was a starship. On the aft fuselage, stark white letters spelled out the bad news: Starfleet Criminal Investigative Service. Kirk had never seen one of their cars before. If anyone had asked, he would have said they were responsible for starbase security. He hadn't even known they operated on Earth. Kirk watched as two formidable women in civilian clothes got out of the car, looked over at him with expressions as blank as the Vulcan agents, then joined the SFPS officers and consular agents. Any idea what they're saying? Kirk asked. Not a great deal. It seems they want to search us. Kirk brightened. Finally, something was going right. The two SCIS agents were leading the others toward the two teenagers. Kirk stood up, straightened his jacket, prompting another brief tug of war with his fellow prisoner. Evening, the senior woman said. She and her partner each held up their official IDs and switched them on. Special Agents Gilfillan and Rickard. Ma'am, Kirk said with a warm smile of utmost sincerity, I'm sure hoping Starfleet can clear up this mess and... Save it, mister, Gilfillan said. She nodded at her partner, who opened the case of the tricorder she carried over her shoulder and pulled the sensor wand from her jacket. Kirk had read the manuals and dreamed about what he could accomplish with one. The Vulcan cleared his throat. In the interests of efficiency, I must inform you that I am protected by full diplomatic immunity. Good for you, Rickard said without conviction. She aimed the sensor wand at Kirk. Then the alien made adjustments to tricorder's main unit and took a second set of readings. Kirk couldn't see the device's display screen, but he found himself relaxing, confident of what it would show. Sure enough, Rickard shared her readings with her boss. Kirk liked the fact that Special Agent Gilfillan didn't look surprised. She walked up to the Vulcan, made him shift uncomfortably as she patted down his cloak, then reached into an interior pocket. I have diplomatic immunity, he insisted. Not for this, the agent said. She held in her hand a currency wafer and the override device Kirk had shipped into the pocket of the alien's cloak when he had pretended to stumble after the fight. The agent squeezed the card, whistled appreciatively, showed it to her partner. 6,000. That is mine, the Vulcan said. Gilfillan held up the small cylindrical device. How about this? I have never seen that before. The agent showed it to Kirk. Kirk shrugged. What is it? Some kind of alien gadget or something? The senior agent stared hard at the Vulcan as Rickard took further tricorder readings of the device. It's a quantum code transmitter designed to override Starfleet security lockouts. It's also illegal. The alien's eyes widened for an instant before he caught himself and brought his face back to a neutral expression. I am protected by diplomatic immunity, so I've heard, but that only applies to local laws. She pointed to the two equally unexpressive consular agents. Your friends will tell you, immunity doesn't extend to Starfleet's uniform code of justice, and this is now a Starfleet matter. She stepped to one side and pointed to the SCIS car. Let's go. The Vulcan stood still, as if too shocked to move. Kirk stepped forward, doing his best to look alarmed and contrite. Okay, so I started a fight when this alien hit me, but the junior agent held up her sensor wand. Stow it, kid. Your DNA is all over that thing, too, so give it a rest. Gilfillan gave Kirk a firm push on his shoulder to get him and his companion started toward the SCIS car. Kirk protested. "I got to try to put something in my pocket, and I pushed it away." But the agents weren't listening, and the Vulcan was not resisting. The inside of the car's back passenger compartment was uncomfortable and covered with a seamless coating of an easy-to-disinfect nanofilm to which nothing would stick, except the lingering odors from 100 other prisoners. Kirk grimaced at the smell as he was thumped back in his seat and the restraints closed over him. He turned to look at the alien still cuffed to his wrist. The Vulcan stared straight ahead, his posture ramrod stiff. Kirk frowned, leaned back, and closed his eyes as the car took off. "Well, this is going to be fun," he said. The Vulcan offered no response. Kirk sighed. This was going to be a longer night than he had planned. He might as well make the best of it. "Jim Kirk," he said. "Spock." And that was that.